Hi, welcome to another episode of Hot Takes and a little bit of strange news, really. I always said that John Swinney wouldn't last long in the role. He was a caretaker. He wasn't ever the real leader of the party. And it looks like I may well be right. He may well be gone very, very soon. Because there are many, and we mean a lot, within the party now that are calling for John Swinney to resign immediately. And the reason for this call for resignation is that Angus Robertson met with an Israeli diplomat, the deputy ambassador to Britain. Now, why Scotland feels necessary to talk to foreign nations is beyond anyone's knowledge, because they don't have a foreign policy. They don't have a foreign office, as it were. All these sort of things should be done by the Foreign and Commonwealth Office down in Westminster. And I suspect there was probably no diplomatic cover, as there indeed should have been, but that's a different video on a different day. But the reason they're calling for Swinney's head over this is that he backed Angus Robertson talking to the Israeli diplomat. And the supporters now, the SNP supporters, are all now calling for John Swinney to go. They're saying, oh no, it's wrong. It's wrong to talk to the Israelis. Although somebody's got to talk to them. I'm not saying it has to be them, but somebody has to talk to the Israelis. There will be no peace. How did Churchill put it? More jaw, less war. And he's absolutely right. Eventually, what happens is everybody sits around a table and talks, and that's how peace happens. But it shouldn't be Scottish ministers from a devolved parliament doing the discussions, of course. It's not their place. They have other fish to fry. And the very fact that he backed this now, though, has upset the very left-wing, anti-Semitic members of the SNP, the ones who hate Jews. It's very, very similar in Scotland to 1930s Germany, don't you think? Single-party state, culture of the identity of the leader, total adherence to policy, and very anti-Semitic. Yeah, it's got a lot in common. I'm half expecting them to invade Berwick. Anyway, the talks were actually kept off official records, other than the fact that everyone knew that they were happening, kind of thing. But they weren't officially put on to records until 4 days after it happens, rather than what usually happens is it's diaried in advance. And the reason they're claiming that is they were claiming it was for national security. Come off it. You don't have any say on national security. You're not MI5, more MFI, really, aren't you? And then it was only confirmed like 4 days after it happened. And that's when, of course, Swinney backed Angus Robertson for having them. He's our representative for foreign affairs. You don't have foreign affairs. You're the SNP. You're a regional devolved assembly. Deal with Scottish problems, most of which you've caused. Anyway, he was basically bounced into, I don't know how you put it, desperate apologies, not apologies, desperate explanations. But of course has to remain loyal to his ministers. So backed Angus Robertson to the hilt, saying, oh, well, Angus did a fine job, blah, blah, blah. We talked about this, talked about that, talked about the other, all the things they were talking about. But many members now have said, this is wrong, you shouldn't be doing it. You know, we're shun them. We know we hate Jews. We're the SNP. We're anti-Jewish. We dislike the Jews. Pogroms, you know, we should have camps. Get the camps, you know, because that's more or less who they are. And they're all writing in, and they're all asking, and well, allegedly, we have to be careful what we say. Allegedly, there have been thousands of letters gone in asking John Swinney to consider his position and resign over his backing of these talks. Strangely, no one's asking for Angus Robertson to resign. Isn't that odd? Is it just that people are angry with John Swinney for backing Angus Robertson? Or is this merely the excuse they need in order to get rid of him? Seems odd, doesn't it? Especially as they've changed the rules now to allow a certain individual who shall forever not remain nameless, but you all know who I mean, who happens to be resident in Westminster, to possibly come north of the border and lead the party. Well, stay at Westminster and still lead the party. That's the point. That's what they want. Because I've changed the rules that this can happen now. Because obviously they like Flynn. They think Flynn is the Messiah. Anyone but Forbes, I suppose. But that's what I reckon is happening. I'm thinking now that they've changed the rules so that Flynn could lead the party, I think probably they're looking for any excuse they can get to get the caretaker out. I said this would happen. One of the guys, there's a guy called David Gill. Let me explain. A guy called David Gill. He was writing in the National, and again, this is where sometimes the National, which is a loathsome rag usually, but it does occasionally come up with some little nuggets of gold. David Gill said in there, Scotland's representatives within the independence movement should and must refrain from promoting Israel as a normal democratic state. Well, it's a far nearer normal democratic state than Palestine, because at least Israel isn't run by terrorists. He claimed the country practices apartheid. This is a joke, right? And I'll explain why in a minute. Something Israel stoutly denies, adding it kills thousands of innocents in the name of killing a few Hamas fighters and has, to add disgrace, used armaments supplied by the UK to do it. Supplied by everybody. Also, Israel makes a lot of its own, you know. As opposed to practicing apartheid, do you know that Israel has more Israeli Arabs than Israeli Jews? Israel is by far and away an Arab country. There are more Arabs living in Israel than Jews, even though it's the Jewish homeland. But these people won't accept that. Jews are a minority in Israel. How can they possibly be practicing apartheid when every single one of those Arabs has each and every same right as any of the Jews in Israel? And yet the Arabs in Israel aren't forming parties and running government. The Arabs in Israel are quite happy to be Israeli Arabs. They're living very fine lives. And they're not going around and causing terrorism. Hamas are. Let me tell you, if some of our neighbours started firing missiles, let's say it was the French, for example, they started firing missiles over the channel, do you think we wouldn't do something about that? It's a joke, isn't it? But this morally repugnant, bankrupt party, the SNP, now wants its morally repugnant, bankrupt and dodgy leader gone. And I think the excuse is Israel. I don't think it's Israel. I think they're looking to put him, to get rid of him, to install Flynn as the new leader. Thanks very much. Take care. Bye.